Hello, BookTube. I've got a little announcement video for you today. Micah Cummins and I did a buddy read of Dan Jones's debut novel, The Essex Dogs, back in February. And although we flubbed it, we picked a book that was not published yet, as people had to wait till the middle of the month to read a copy. We had a blast. It really did. We're two 20-something guys just trying to figure out this wacky, topsy-turvy world of ours, and it worked really well. And so we tried it again. In March, this month, we did James Clavell's Shogun. Now, that worked really well as well. Micah is really enjoying the book. I loved rereading it, and a lot of you have been emailing me and telling me that this has been on your list to reread forever and ever, or it's been on your shelf to read forever and ever, and that you're really glad for the nudge because it's so good. It is so good. It is such a good book, but it's a huge book. It's gigantic. And Micah has a job that he goes to. He has friends and family, social life, connections of all kinds. And his heart was willing, but he doesn't have all the time in the world to read. And so he is still struggling to finish Shogun in time for March to finish. But so we knew two things. One is that we definitely want to keep this buddy read going. And it's a forward-facing thing. It's a buddy read that you can join in on. We definitely wanted to keep that going. And maybe a shorter book for April, maybe something shorter. And one of the patterns that seems to be emerging here is that we pick a book that I have read many times and that Micah has not read at all. This is a little bit inevitable. I would say a little bit inevitable. I've read a lot in my life. And Micah is almost 60 years younger than I am, so it stands to reason that this would be true. We picked a winner for April. In fact, we picked a fun process for April. I think you're going to have a blast. I really do. If you're going to join us, if you're joining us with these buddy reads, we're going to have a blast anyway. I think if you join us, you're going to have a blast, and you have a little bit of time to prepare. We are going to read in April Beowulf. But not just any Beowulf. We're going to read, April has 5 weeks in it. 5 weekends. So what we're going to do is read a different version, a different translation of Beowulf every week. It's a little thing. It's 80 pages. It won't take long to do, and it's so much fun to compare translations. That is so much fun. So we're going to start on the 1st of April with J.R.R. Tolkien's translation of Beowulf. Tolkien, of course, famous for Lord of the Rings, but he did a lot of translating work, and his version of Beowulf is out there. So we're going to start with that. That is April 1st. Then we're going to move on to whatever the new translation of Beowulf from Penguin is. I have one by David Wright and one by Michael Alexander, and it's neither one of these. The current Penguin Classic translation is neither one of these. It's somebody else. We're going to go on to Penguin Classic next. That has the longest reach. Right? Penguin Classics are disseminated in schools. So if you're at an American university or a UK university and you have a module on ancient English literature and you're going to read Beowulf, which is not an ask. It's not a lot to ask a student. It's not a long work. You're almost certainly going to have the Penguin Classic. And so it's worthwhile, I think, to see what's out there in that kind of distribution. And when it comes to distribution, Beowulf has also had 2 incredibly popular translations, incredibly lucrative popular translations. So the 3rd week of April, we're going to read the first of those, which is Burton Raffles' translation of Beowulf. This is an old Mentor paperback, but this thing has had many, many editions, and it made a mint of money for both Mentor books and also for Burton Raffles. It made a mint of money. And this is an old Mentor paperback that I really like because it's one of the only examples that I usually see on paperbacks of Beowulf, any version of Beowulf, that shows an old Beowulf fighting a dragon instead of a young Beowulf fighting Grendel, or Grendel's mother. Pretty interesting, but we will get to it. We will be talking all about this. Why not compare? This thing sold like crazy. Why not compare it to the other translations that are out there? And when you're talking about Beowulf translations that sold, there is no more popular edition than Seamus Heaney's. In fact, Seamus Heaney's translation of Beowulf is one of the most popular translations of any work into English that's ever been done. It sold unbelievably well. It displaced Burton Raffles in terms of not only preference for readers, but also sales figures, which I wouldn't have thought possible. I just wouldn't have thought it possible. It was everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. It came out in paperback, sold even more, was inducted into the Norton Critical Edition line, which means that it will go out into bookstores. It was put in the Norton Anthology of English Literature, which means it will go out to universities. This is the Norton Critical of the Seamus Heaney, with an introduction by Dan Donoghue. That's quite pithy, quite insightful. But you don't need, the one that you will probably recognize is the black cover with a chainmail covered head. That's probably the design that you will recognize for the Seamus Heaney Beowulf. It doesn't have to be this Norton Critical. It can be anything, really. And that leaves us with one extra week in April. Now, I want to do a live discussion with Micah. I want to do a live discussion for Shogun, but I have to wait for him to finish it. We did one for Essex Dogs, and it was a lot of fun. I want to do a live discussion for Beowulf as well at the end of April, but it does leave us one extra weekend. And I would like to suggest one other thing that we read, which is not a translation of Beowulf. Instead, it's Grendel by John Gardner, which is, again, not a large ask. It's not a long novel. It's a fraction of the length of any other novel that he wrote. And it's very popular. You probably have a copy or have seen a copy. There are copies out there. It went crazy. Something about this story definitely strikes a note. It didn't work for Hollywood. It didn't work for the weird movie. But it works for books. I would like to do that. I realize it's a buddy read I'm doing with Micah, so I don't need to ask your permission. You'll either join in or you won't. I guess I'll run it by Micah and see. I didn't know at first. I promoted the idea that we would read a different translation every week, and when I did that, I'd lost sight of the fact that April has an extra weekend. So we do have room. We could finish up with a contemporary version, a contemporary retelling of the story, certainly the most popular one that's ever been done. It's an idea. Anyway, if Micah doesn't have the time for John Gardner's Grendel, then we will just talk. We'll do a live stream on that final week. But that's what we're doing. For our buddy read in April, we are doing Beowulf. A celebration of Beowulf, really, and also a study of translations. How are these translations different? And how are they the same? Which ones will you prefer? What are the good parts of any one of them? It's going to be a lot of fun, I think. I've always wanted to do this, and now to do it on BookTube with a partner and for a whole audience, that is just fantastic. So just an announcement video, that's what we're doing for April for my buddy read with Micah, our ongoing buddy read, our ongoing public buddy read. We're doing Beowulf in many incarnations to see what we make of it. So I hope you join us. It's a lot of fun, especially if you haven't read Beowulf. Perfect way to get a real panoramic view of the modern English versions that are out there. So anyway, hope to see you then. I'll wrap this up for now, and I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.